Well, in yet another case of Bone Spurs and his administration hiring on the merits, Lindsey Halligan, the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, lost not one, but both of her cases against Letitia James and against James Comey. And while everybody was looking at the cases that James Comey was bringing against Lindsey Halligan, Letitia James was working her magic. And the queen is nothing to mess with. The judge ruled that the appointment of Lindsey Halligan to interim U.S. attorney of the Eastern District of Virginia was unlawful. This was because her appointment violated the federal statute, Section 546, which is the appointment clause. Okay, so this is how it happened. On January 20th, 2025, Jessica Aber, who was the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, who was appointed by Biden and confirmed by the Senate, she resigned. I couldn't imagine why she would resign on that day, but I digress. A day later, Pam Bondi appointed Eric Siebert to be the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. She was able to make that interim appointment under Section 546. Now, Eric Siebert could serve as interim attorney without being confirmed by the Senate for 120 days, after which he could be appointed by a district judge. So at the end of his 120 days, it was May 21st. A district judge went ahead on May 9th to appoint him and allow him to continue his duties, which went into effect on May 21st. Now, sometime after that, he started being pressured to find something on James Comey that they could charge him with. But after an investigation, he discovered that there was nothing that was probable enough that would score an indictment, much less a guilty verdict. Well, Bone Spurs didn't like that. So Bone Spurs started saying that he wanted Siebert to quit. Now, a couple of hours after Bone Spurs made his desires public, Siebert actually resigned. Now, that happened September 19th. The very next day, on September 20th, is when Bone Spurs made that totally not illegal post telling Pam Bondi that she should go after specific people on legal grounds, just because he didn't like them. In that post, he named James Comey, Letitia James, and Adam Schiff. Less than 48 hours later, Pam Bondi signed an order that appointed Lindsey Halligan as interim U.S. attorney to the East District of Virginia. And even though the lawyers who were still there signed a joint memo telling her that there was nothing on Comey and they didn't recommend trying to get an indictment on him, she went to the grand jury herself to try to get an indictment, even though she had no prosecutorial experience. To everyone's surprise, she secured an indictment on both Letitia James and James Comey. And people started questioning how she was able to do that. But Letitia James started questioning whether or not she should have been appointed that way to begin with. Now, the problem with Pam Bondi issuing an order to appoint her to interim U.S. attorney is because they had already done that with Eric Siebert, which started the 120-day time limit. After that time limit, if there is another appointment to be made, it must be made specifically by a district judge. But my guess is they tried to circumvent that because Lindsey Halligan was not qualified for the job that they appointed her to. And a judge would have seen that and would have not approved that appointment. That's my view. I don't know if that's accurate. So because the DOJ's ability to appoint an interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia stopped on May 21st, they were not able to legally appoint her to that position without using the authority of a district judge, which they did not. So when Letitia James argued this fact, motioning for a dismissal, the judge agreed with her and pretty much ruled that everything Lindsey Halligan has been doing, including the arguments in front of the grand jury, which when she asked for the grand jury transcripts, Halligan only gave her partial transcripts that left out everything that she said. She ruled all of those actions to be invalid, unlawful, and in violation of Section 546. So she dismissed not only Letitia James's case, but also James Comey's. But even though the judge didn't allow the DOJ to move to appoint Halligan properly, she did dismiss both cases without prejudice. So if the DOJ ever get their crap together, they could essentially bring those cases back. But in the case of James Comey, the statute of limitations have already run out. And in the case of Letitia James, they really don't stand a chance against the Queen. So this is just another day in Bone Spurs' mediocre administration.